At the age of 39, Ethan Cole possessed it all: wealth, recognition, and influence. Yet, no one inquired why a man seemingly blessed with everything lay awake at night, gazing at the ceiling, suffocating in a silence that no achievement could ever satisfy. The evening he encountered 3 boys gathered around a trash fire did not alter his standing in any way. Yet it transformed every aspect of his essence. Ethan Cole possessed all the trappings of success that one might expect a man to desire. At 39, he held the position of CEO at a multi-billion-dollar tech empire, a company that was instrumental in shaping the future. His visage had adorned the cover of Fortune, Forbes, and every other publication that revered brilliance and affluence. His hair was consistently immaculate, his bespoke suits priced higher than the average person's rent, and his smile, meticulously crafted for the camera, remained unwavering in the public eye. Yet, concealed within the darkened confines of his SUV, and beyond the sleek glass of his penthouse overlooking the San Francisco skyline, Ethan Cole existed as a man drained of substance. Each morning, he rose to a world wrapped in quietude, the type of silence that offers no solace but instead gnaws at the soul. Silence reigns in the corridor. Silence prevails. Only the soft buzz of technology, the rhythmic motion of blinds parting to reveal a city that had lost all significance for him. His aides revered him, financiers dreaded him, and rivals coveted him. Yet no individual ever truly understood him. That worked for Ethan perfectly, or at least that's what he convinced himself. He realized that success served as a remarkable diversion. For a time, it silenced the recollections. His mother lay curled up on the floor, trembling from withdrawal. The wail of sirens echoed through the streets. The nights he lay down with an empty stomach, the car's ceiling looming above him, drooping and marked by time. He concealed that child beneath a facade of opulence and reason. Yet, certain specters refused to remain interred. In the quiet hours of the night, after the revelry had faded and the lights had softened, Ethan found himself perched on his rooftop terrace, a glass of something fine in hand, gazing up at the stars, pondering the inexplicable chill that lingered within him. He had crafted every aspect from the foundation, his enterprise, his persona, his wealth. Still, an unshakable heaviness lingered in his chest. A weighty, formless presence lingered, akin to a sealed door within him, one he had long since lost the key to. His therapist once inquired about the last time he experienced true happiness. Lack of enthusiasm, not achievement, delight. Ethan found himself at a loss for words. Many believed that power had a captivating allure. Indeed, it was so for a period. Yet, in time, it simply turned into yet another habit. Simply another challenge to conquer. The triumphs in the boardroom, the speeches that spread like wildfire, the applause that resonated, all felt like empty reverberations in a space that remained unoccupied. On that December night, when the world started to change, Ethan had no intention of halting his course. He was being chauffeured home after yet another gala, yet another photo opportunity with individuals he had no interest in, dressed in a tuxedo that felt more like a disguise. Yet there was a stirring within him, an instinct, a long-buried human desire, urging him to step outside for a walk. He requested the driver to stop close to the abandoned train station, a section of the city that seemed forgotten, much like all the memories Ethan wished to leave behind. The air was frigid, biting at the lungs with a sharpness that was almost palpable. The sound of his polished shoes echoed against the uneven pavement as he strolled, his hands tucked deep into the pockets of his coat. And then he beheld them. 3 tiny silhouettes huddled against the charred remains of a once bustling convenience store. They huddled together in worn jackets, seeking solace in each other's closeness against the chill. A soft orange glow danced nearby, emanating from a makeshift fire nestled within a weathered can. One of the boys glanced upward, if only for a fleeting moment. Large, expressive eyes, sunken cheeks, perhaps around 7 years of age. Ethan's pace began to wane. His breath hitched. A deep, primal ache coiled within him, echoing with the weight of ages past. He remained motionless, observing them intently. They remained still, I didn't seek assistance. I didn't plead. They merely was present, as if this were just another day. This was existence. Ethan pivoted and made his way back to the car, his expression a complete enigma. Yet, a fracture had emerged, and that crack was on the verge of transforming everything. The following morning, Ethan Cole found himself seated at the elongated glass dining table in his penthouse, a steaming cup of black coffee sitting untouched before him. The city hummed with life far beneath, yet its noise remained distant and unreachable to him. Every corner of his home echoed with an unsettling silence, each item meticulously arranged, resembling a gallery designed for a ghost who had never truly inhabited the space. He gazed at the skyline, yet his mind was consumed by the image of those three boys, huddled together beside the weathered barrel of fire. The manner in which the tiniest one quivered. The manner in which the eldest attempted to wrap his arms around the others, as if he could protect them from both the chill and the harshness of the world simultaneously. Ethan felt something else entirely. It was acknowledgement. He remained silent about it in his morning briefing. He refrained from mentioning it as his assistant went through the updates for investors and the expectations from the board. He attended each meeting, responding with nods at the appropriate times. Yet the haunting gaze of those children lingered behind him like a persistent shadow. They remained quiet, yet their presence resonated more profoundly than anything else throughout his day. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, he reached his breaking point. He called off a dinner with a prominent venture capitalist and instructed his driver to return him to the station. There is no security detail in place. No media coverage. Only him. The sun hung low in the sky as he arrived, stretching shadows across the weathered concrete and the vibrant graffiti that adorned the walls. He was uncertain about what he anticipated. Perhaps they would disappear. Perhaps it was merely the result of an exhausted mind and an abundance of specters. Yet they remained present, every single one, in that very spot, as if time had stood still for them completely. This time he took action instead of remaining still. He approached them with deliberate slowness, mindful of not causing any alarm. The middle boy was the first to spot him and nudged the others. In perfect synchrony, they raised their gazes, filled with caution, as though bracing themselves to flee. Ethan paused a short distance away, lowering himself to their eye level while ensuring his hands remained in sight. He remained silent at first. He lacked the expression. Instead, he unzipped the bag he carried and revealed a plain brown paper sack. Inside, there was a delightful spread of warm food, sandwiches, fresh fruit, and bottled water. Nothing extravagant. Simply enough to express, "I noticed you." He set the bag down on the ground and carefully pushed it in their direction. They remained still. He refrained from pressing them. After a few prolonged moments, the eldest boy extended his hand and seized the sack. He failed to express gratitude to Ethan. He remained expressionless. Yet he chose not to run as well. That sufficed. Ethan rose to his feet, retreated a few steps, and settled onto a dilapidated bench on the opposite side of the street. He remained seated in the cold for nearly an hour, observing them indirectly. As he cast his gaze once more, he noticed the boys were indulging in their meal, still gathered closely, still quiet, however consuming food, and vibrant. He made his way back the following day, and the following day, he provided an abundance of food, coverings, footwear, accessories. He remained silent, never inquiring. I never compelled a dialogue. He continued to appear, day after day, shedding a bit more of the corporate facade that clung to him like a second skin. A subtle change stirred within him, gradual and tentative, yet undeniably genuine. On the fourth day, the eldest boy finally found his voice. "What is it that you desire?" Ethan's eyes fluttered open. The voice was faint, edged with a roughness born of cold and perhaps a hint of skepticism. However, it lacked hostility. It was exhausting and sincere. "I don't want anything," Ethan said after a pause. "Perhaps you might consider seeking some assistance." The boy gazed at him intently for what felt like an eternity. He shifted his gaze once more to the flames dancing in the hearth. Aiden, he murmured, is my name. That is Jasper. And Leo. He refrained from providing a last name. Ethan remained silent. He merely nodded, his heart pounding with a ferocity it hadn't known in years. After what felt like an eternity, Ethan Cole finally sensed a pulse in his existence. No longer drifting like a specter in his own story, he experienced a sense of being fully engaged, awakened, and whether he was aware of it or not, he had just crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The rhythm emerged swiftly, finding its shape in no time. Every day, Ethan would show up at the same hour, right before the sun dipped below the horizon, holding something in his hands. Food, fresh clothes, little items he recalled needing as a child, when no one was there to care for him. With each passing day, the boys drew nearer, engaging in conversation a bit more, and extending their trust just enough to allow him to linger a while longer. It lacked speed. It was far from straightforward. Yet it was genuine. As he immersed himself in their company, the image sharpened with each passing moment. Aiden consistently took the lead, always placing himself at the forefront. He observed Ethan with a calm, discerning gaze that appeared to carry the weight of many more years than just 7. He was not one to smile often, yet he was attentive. Jasper seldom uttered a word, preferring to communicate with nods or brief, terse phrases, yet he was perpetually attentive. And Leo stood apart. His face held a gentle quality that the streets had not yet toughened, a glimmer of hope that had not been extinguished. He offered a brief smile to Ethan as he delivered the hot chocolate. And in that moment, Ethan sensed an unfamiliar flutter in his chest, something he couldn't quite label. One evening, as they lingered by a dilapidated bus stop, the boys started to converse more openly, revealing bits of themselves in fragments, akin to puzzle pieces strewn across the pavement. Aiden referred to their mother for the first time, not using her name but simply as she. She mentioned that she fell ill while staying in a shelter. Reported that a fire occurred. She mentioned that she didn't succeed. Following that moment, there was a profound silence, and no one appeared. No one inquired about their destination. Eventually, those in their vicinity ceased to acknowledge their presence altogether. They shared with Ethan that their nights were spent in alleys, tucked behind dumpsters, and nestled in stairwells whenever a spot could be found. There was a lack of trust in shelters. There are an overwhelming number of individuals with negative intentions. Excessive conflicts. One of them had nearly been taken once. Jasper remained silent for an entire week following that incident. From that moment on, Aiden held them dear. Without fail, he possessed the art of vanishing, ways to render them unseen. Ethan listened, not in the role of a CEO, nor with any ulterior motives, but as a man who had once experienced the sting of being overlooked. He refrained from making empty assurances or showing sympathy. He simply remained. Their synchronized movements stirred something within him. They were not merely enduring. They were fiercely safeguarding each other with all their strength. It was a natural response, unarticulated. As Aiden offered Leo the larger portion of the sandwich, and Jasper draped his sleeve over Leo's hand for warmth, and they all drifted off to sleep, huddled together like a litter of puppies, Ethan sensed the profound depth of their affection. It surpassed everything he had encountered in any corporate confrontation. And he started to understand something deeper. He was beginning to feel a sense of care. Not in the abstract, not as a benefactor or a compassionate figure, but on a personal level. Profoundly. With every day that went by, these boys were weaving their way into his heart, and it filled him with dread. Caring inherently involved taking a chance. To care is to embrace responsibility. Despite all his riches, Ethan Cole had never genuinely allowed himself to take responsibility for another person. This isn't the way. He awoke in the stillness of the night, pondering whether they were warm enough. He ceased to respond to calls during mealtime, solely to dedicate more moments to their company. He started to hold their names close to his heart, like a soft whisper, believing that speaking them aloud could weave them deeper into the fabric of his existence. And then the night arrived when Leo drifted off, resting his head in Ethan's lap. Silence speaks volumes. No permission was sought. a weary young soul, yielding to a sense of security that had eluded him for so long. Ethan remained motionless, like a statue, observing the dance of the firelight across the weathered pavement, his hand gently placed on Leo's back. He remained still for more than an hour. That evening, he chose not to return to the penthouse. He lingered in his car, the engine silent, gazing out at the desolate road ahead. Something was emerging from deep within him, something timeless, burdened yet essential. And even without voicing it, Ethan Cole was already aware. He found himself unable to turn his back on them. Not at this moment. Never. It began with hushed tones in the executive wing. Changes were observed by others long before Ethan became aware of them himself. He started arriving late to meetings, seemingly distracted, with an expression in his eyes that left everyone puzzled. The individual who once commanded every space with sharpness and intent now appeared distracted, only partially engaged, as if a fragment of his being had already transitioned into a different existence. The board members cast furtive looks at one another, their eyes darting behind him. Monica, his assistant, inquired about his well-being on multiple occasions. He consistently claimed he was okay. He spoke the truth. He found it difficult to articulate that, for the first time in years, someone else occupied his thoughts beyond his own concerns. One morning, he found himself in his office, gazing at a performance report that held no interest for him. Aiden's voice lingered in his thoughts from the previous night. "We don't go to shelters. They separated you." That solitary sentence lingered in his mind, steeped in a fear and experience that no child of 7 should ever bear. Jasper recoiled as a security guard approached too near. Leo inquired whether Ethan intended to depart, reminiscent of the previous individual who had promised assistance. Those words carried more weight than any financial forecast or market change. He started to make phone calls, initially with a soft whisper. A colleague at the Department of Social Services, a lawyer he had faith in, a doctor who was indebted to him. He sought to discover a lawful way ahead. Guardianship, safeguarding, anything that could bring this to life. However, bureaucracy is indifferent to noble intentions. It progresses at a glacial pace, particularly for those lacking documentation, unblemished backgrounds, and easily traceable roots. The boys were without any known family ties, and there were no birth certificates recorded for them. They existed as phantoms within the framework, impossible to track and, in the perspective of the authorities, expendable. As news spread that Ethan Cole, a formidable figure in Silicon Valley, sought custody of 3 homeless children, the response was immediate and harsh. The media seized upon it with the ferocity of predators drawn to a scent of chaos. Headlines varied from worry to sensationalism. Are tech giants experiencing a midlife crisis? Billionaire street kids? Philanthropy or facade? A news crew has begun to set up camp outside his building. Emergency meetings were convened by investors. His board was furious. "You've tarnished the company's reputation," one director exclaimed during a heated video call. "Your behavior is starting to pose a risk." Ethan remained seated, absorbing the words, his expression serene yet inscrutable. Responsibility. That was the term they employed. As though kindness were a violation of an agreement. As though children were a source of controversy. An ultimatum was presented to him. Take a moment to gain some perspective. Allow the public relations team to take charge of it. Separate himself. Concentrate on his responsibilities. Become the figure upon whom their entire legacy was constructed. Not a hero standing on the street. Not a careless paternal figure pursuing phantoms. He spent the night wide awake. He perched on the edge of his bed, the city shimmering softly beyond the windows, reflecting on all the creations he had brought to life. Every negotiation, each address, the unveilings, the unyielding chase for advancement. And yet, none of it had ever satisfied the emptiness within him. Nothing else had provided him with the same warmth and connection as sitting next to 3 boys by a fire. Link. Significance. Objective. As dawn broke, the choice had been settled. A press conference was called by him. The space brimmed with journalists, flashes illuminating the scene, microphones reaching out like eager hands. Ethan approached the podium, dressed casually in a simple sweater, forgoing the formalities of a suit and tie. Simply a man resolute in his decisions. For the majority of my existence, I have been in pursuit of figures, he started. I have created innovations that transformed the world. Yet, I seem to have lost the ability to experience anything genuine. Until I encountered 3 children who showed me the true essence of selflessness and the importance of caring for others above oneself. Silence enveloped the room. I am resigning from my position as CEO, effective immediately. I have no plans to retire. I am selecting a superior option. Journalists reacted with fervor. Inquiries surged forth. He remained silent in response to them. He stepped outside, heading directly to his car, making his way back to that neglected corner of the city that everyone preferred to ignore. In a quiet moment, 3 boys lingered, oblivious to the fact that a man had relinquished an empire, all for the sake of honoring a promise. He came with just his jacket and a faint smile. "We're heading home," he remarked. The boys remained silent, not inquiring further. They simply followed. The house was not grand in scale. It wasn't situated on a precipice or concealed behind barriers. It wasn't the sort of location you'd find in glossy magazines or high-end listings, and Ethan appreciated that aspect. The 2-story craftsman home nestled in a serene neighborhood beyond the city featured a charming wraparound porch, creaky wooden floors, and a backyard infused with the scent of pine and aged soil. It was the sort of place designed for life, not for ostentation. For the first time in his life, Ethan made a purchase not out of a desire for impressiveness, but rather for the comfort of safety. The boys entered with trepidation, their movements tentative, gazes flitting about as if anticipating the moment the snare would spring closed. The living room exuded warmth, bathed in soft light, accompanied by the delicate aroma of something delightful baking in the oven. Ethan had faced 2 setbacks with his frozen cookies earlier but remained undeterred. Blankets draped over the couch, shelves brimming with books, and a spacious table where they could gather for meals together. On the upper floor, 3 distinct rooms awaited, each showcasing its own unique character. One embraced a cosmic theme, another was adorned with maps and celestial bodies, while the last exuded tranquility with its gentle hues and shelves brimming with picture books and crayons. Ethan had chosen each item personally, absorbing insights from their discussions and the small hints they revealed about what they longed for. However, the boys did not dash into their rooms. They refrained from rummaging through drawers or jumping on beds. They remained there, clustered by the door, as though anticipating someone to burst in, to declare it all a misunderstanding, that they were out of place in this moment. Leo grasped the fabric of Aiden's jacket sleeve tightly. Jasper's eyes flitted to the windows, as if he were mapping out an escape route in his mind. Ethan refrained from applying any pressure on them. He simply knelt before them and spoke gently. "No one will take this away from you. Not at this moment. Never." No response was received. Yet they chose not to run as well. That evening, the 3 of them nestled closely on the floor of the tiniest room, the one Ethan had crafted for Leo. Blankets cocooning them, gazes alert and unblinking despite the shadows. Ethan rested in the hallway, propped against the wall outside their door, attuned to the sounds within. He stayed put, not when his back throbbed with discomfort, not when the device vibrated with notifications of missed calls and messages from the outside realm. He remained. Time flowed by. Then a week passed. Gradually, the barriers that separated them started to fracture. Aiden began to inquire. Jasper took a seat next to Ethan during breakfast, yet his words remained few. Leo, dear Leo, started to hum to himself once more, particularly when Ethan attempted to make pancakes, which he did with little skill but a great deal of enthusiasm. The home transformed into a melody, rich with subtle noises, the patter of feet on the stairs, joyful laughter echoing from the backyard, the hum of cartoons on lazy Saturday mornings, the gentle scratch of crayons gliding across paper. Ethan had never realized the extent of the sounds that could fill a home. He had never truly understood the beauty of that sound until now. He began sharing stories with them under the night sky. Initially, they merely observed from a distance. Then from the brink of the bed. Gradually, they nestled around him, one after another, as if each was a piece of a puzzle finding its perfect spot. The initial moment Jasper extended his hand toward Ethan was so delicate that he nearly overlooked it. A gentle pull, a quiet confidence. Ethan grasped it delicately, as if it were fragile and could shatter at any moment. As the night deepened, Leo drifted into slumber on Ethan's chest, his breath gentle and rhythmic, fingers entwined in the fabric of his shirt. Aiden murmured from the threshold, his voice barely audible, "You're different from the rest." Ethan remained silent. He was unable to. His throat felt constricted. By the end of the second week, Leo began calling him Dad. Not always. Not in a public setting. Yet in those hushed, reverent instances when solitude enveloped me. When it occurred for the first time, Ethan stood still. In that moment, almost instinctively, he replied softly, "Yeah, buddy." The word nestled within him, akin to a key finding its way into a long-neglected lock. It wasn't entirely straightforward. Nightmares loomed, panic surged, and withdrawals struck unexpectedly. Aiden meticulously checked the locks on the doors 3 times before settling in for the night. Jasper had an aversion to strangers, even the delivery man who brought the groceries. Leo occasionally found himself in tears without understanding the cause. Yet they had ceased to merely survive. They were in the process of mending. In unity, for the first time since his childhood, Ethan felt a sense of arrival rather than anticipation. He was already experiencing it. He was indifferent to stock charts, quarterly goals, or the applause that comes from standing on a stage. He experienced cozy mornings with syrupy fingers from pancakes, and 3 boys who gradually, softly, began to feel a sense of security. He had stopped constructing an empire. He was creating a family. The tranquility was fleeting. It never truly does, not entirely, especially when something so remarkable is constructed on a foundation that once crumbled beneath your feet. A knock echoed through the quiet house, too early for a Saturday morning, sending a twist of unease through Ethan's stomach before he even stepped into the hallway. The boys lounged upstairs in their pajamas, engrossed in cartoons, their bowls of cereal only partially finished. He swung the door wide, anticipation bubbling within him as he awaited the arrival of a package. Instead, he encountered a woman on the porch, arms crossed, her gaze piercing and unyielding. Her voice flowed effortlessly, almost unnaturally, as if it had been polished through countless performances. She presented herself as Carla, stating that she was the boys' maternal grandmother. She mentioned that she had only recently learned about the events that transpired, and she intended to return them to their rightful place. Her tone was devoid of emotion, resembling the formality of a legal transaction. Her smile lacked warmth, failing to illuminate her eyes. Ethan remained frozen, bewildered, grappling with the reality of the words that reached his ears. The boys had never spoken of a grandmother. He requested evidence. She passed him a folder containing several birth records, her identification, and a neatly typed letter from a lawyer, all prepared and ready for action. Ethan chose not to invite her in. He gently closed the door, securing it with a lock, his heart racing in his chest. He approached Aiden directly, who halted the show the moment he caught sight of Ethan's expression. Ethan inquired, with caution, whether they were familiar with a woman named Carla. The response arrived far too swiftly. Aiden mentioned that she would often yell at Mom. She attempted to capture us once. Following the blaze, she vanished without a trace. That was everything Ethan required to know. By Monday, a tempest of legal challenges had descended. Carla submitted a request for emergency custody, asserting that Ethan had no authority to keep the children with him. That was the term they employed, harbor, as if they were on the run, rather than 3 frightened boys who had finally found warm beds and someone to kiss them goodnight. Ethan's attorneys stepped in right away, yet there was an unmistakable tension in the air. Carla was faced with documents, familial ties, and the legal system often prioritizes genetic connections over emotional ones. The boys sensed the change before a word was uttered. Aiden grew more distant, increasingly vigilant. Jasper has once more ceased to eat. Leo started experiencing bedwetting, feeling too embarrassed to confide in anyone. They felt an unsettling presence from the world beyond the walls, as if it were attempting to invade and tear everything apart. For the first time in years, Ethan experienced a profound sense of powerlessness. Neither wealth nor power could ensure security. Not at this moment. At last, the day of the court hearing arrived. The rain fell relentlessly that day, sharp and frigid, as if the heavens were issuing a dire warning. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, filled with watchful eyes. Lawyers, social workers, and a judge whose weathered face bore the weight of countless stories. Ethan couldn't help but ponder the number of shattered families that had crossed this very threshold in the judge's long career. Carla sat with an air of satisfaction beside her attorney, clad in understated gray, embodying the role of a worried grandmother. She discussed the importance of stability, the significance of blood ties, and Ethan's lack of experience with children, along with his dubious motivations. She portrayed herself as the sole rational protector. Ethan refrained from delivering a speech. He remained composed. He candidly expressed the truth. He recounted to the court the moment he discovered them. No one arrived for them. They gathered closely, enveloped in a shroud of fear and silence, and he chose to stay. He shared moments of Leo drifting off on his chest, reflected on Jasper's subtle courage, and pondered Aiden's keen intellect paired with a burdensome heart. He portrayed them not as burdens or charity projects. He spoke of them as if they were his own children. As a matter of fact, they were. The judge paid attention. To the astonishment of all, he inquired whether the children would be interested in sharing their thoughts. Ethan paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Yet Aiden rose before anyone had the chance to intervene. His voice, though quiet, held a steady resolve. "If you send us with her," he said, nodding toward Carla, "we'll escape once more." All fell quiet in the room. "She has no desire for our presence. She simply desires what accompanies us." However, Aiden turned to gaze at Ethan. He made his choice for us. He was under no obligation to do so. He simply did. Leo began to weep. Jasper grasped his hand. In that instant, it became achingly, stunningly evident that this transcended mere legality. It revolved around love. The judge gazed at his papers for an extended period. Then, with little fanfare, he decided in Ethan's favor. Full guardianship has been granted, effective immediately. Carla erupted in frustration and left before the last words could be uttered. Ethan remained still at the outset. He remained seated, dazed, with his hands quivering gently in his lap. Then Leo dashed into his embrace. Jasper trailed behind. Aiden paused for a moment, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, before making his way over with deliberate slowness. Without uttering a word, he leaned in, allowing Ethan to embrace him as well. That evening, they reveled in the joy of pizza, apple juice, and a delightful mess of pillows scattered across the living room floor. They lingered into the night, shared hearty laughter, and for the first time in ages, they felt a sense of ease, free from the anticipation of impending misfortune. They were secure. They were kin, and no one could ever strip that from me. Not at this moment. Never again. That year, summer arrived gradually, as if the universe had finally chosen to exhale. The air felt inviting, the days stretched out luxuriously, and the home that had once resonated with doubt now thrummed with vitality. Every window stood wide, every door slightly open, as though the house had embraced its role with newfound assurance. It had transformed into something more permanent, no longer just a refuge or a fleeting pause. Felt like a sanctuary. And in that home, something extraordinary had begun to flourish: liberation. Aiden, ever the guardian, had gradually permitted himself to embrace the joys of childhood. He transformed the garage into a creative haven, crafting items from discarded materials and remnants of wood, birdhouses, repurposed radios that became speakers, and an intricate treehouse design now proudly displayed on the fridge like a treasured artifact. He began to read, not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire, primarily science fiction. tales of far-off galaxies and young heroes who rescued the cosmos. Ethan once stumbled upon him late at night, furiously jotting down thoughts in a tattered notebook, illuminated only by the glow of a flashlight. He remained silent. He simply smiled and allowed him to be. Jasper discovered his expression through subtler means. He immersed himself in puzzles, chess, and music, frequently found by the window with headphones on, sketching abstract shapes that initially seemed nonsensical, but ultimately transformed into something exquisite. His words were few, yet each one carried weight. One day, unexpectedly, he paused his drawing, looked up, and said, "You don't need to keep demonstrating that you're a good dad. We are already aware." Ethan stepped out of the room for a moment, needing a breath of fresh air. And Leo, the charming and creative spirit, became the center of everyone's universe. In the early hours, his voice filled the air with song, crafting whimsical games adorned with absurd rules, bestowing playful nicknames upon everything in sight, even the toaster, which he affectionately dubbed Sir Crunch-a-Lot. He crafted comic books featuring Ethan as the protagonist, a caped character known as Super Dad, who triumphed over challenges with hugs, pancakes, and extraordinary hearing abilities. Each page overflowed with affection. As night enveloped the room, Leo drifted into slumber, the issue resting in his grasp. Meanwhile, Ethan lingered at his side for hours, turning the pages, burdened by the significance of it all. The cadence of their existence grew consistent, enriched by the customs they crafted together over time. Friday night transformed into a cinematic experience, filled with the delightful crunch of popcorn and spirited discussions about the mightiest superhero. Saturday mornings were all about pancakes, whether they were burnt or not, while Sundays were dedicated to leisurely strolls through the woods behind their home, where Leo always took it upon himself to lead the way in their little adventures. Scraped knees, spilled milk, tantrums at bedtime, and soft apologies murmured in the stillness of the night. Yet, those moments were woven together with laughter, sincerity, and a feeling Ethan had once thought he could never offer: pure and unconditional love. Beyond their confines, the world continued to observe. The tale of the billionaire who became a father had captured the public's imagination months ago, yet it remained ever present. Rather, it expanded, not due to Ethan fueling the flames, but because individuals perceived something within it that they fervently yearned to trust in: change. Salvation. The notion that a person who once resided in lofty glass towers could discover his essence at the Earth's surface. Proposals for documentaries were made. Interviews have been requested. Contracts for new stories arrived at his threshold. Ethan declined the majority of it. Yet there was one thing he agreed to: a foundation. He introduced it subtly, devoid of fanfare or media attention, utilizing his personal funds and the technological framework he had dedicated 10 years to developing. Programming for Young Minds. A program designed to provide technology education, mentorship, and essential resources for foster children, homeless youth, and teenagers transitioning out of the system. One morning, the application portal launched online, featuring a poignant quote on the landing page: "Every child deserves someone who won't leave." In just a matter of weeks, a multitude had submitted their applications. Ethan dedicated his evenings to building the foundation. Once the boys were tucked in for the night, felt effortless. It seemed like a destiny he was destined to fulfill. Occasionally, he found himself grinning while immersed in coding or devising a scholarship framework, and it dawned on him that, for the first time, he wasn't pursuing achievement. He was nurturing it. One evening, following a notably exhausting day brimming with data and tales for bedtime, Ethan found himself in the kitchen, observing the boys peacefully slumbering on the couch, entwined in blankets and limbs. He extinguished the lights, one after another, and murmured a quiet thank you into the shadows. He found himself uncertain about the recipient of his gratitude. Perhaps the cosmos. Perhaps the shattered fragments of his history that inexplicably brought him to this moment. Or perhaps it was the trio of boys who bestowed upon him the singular treasure he believed was forever out of reach: a purpose to remain. On a balmy September afternoon, Ethan came to the realization that his perception of time had shifted from what it once was. There were no deadlines looming every few months, No chaotic series of meetings, no launch timelines plastered everywhere. The fridge calendar was now brimming with birthday reminders, school field trips, dentist appointments, and a bold red circle around family camping weekend, meticulously drawn by Leo with a marker that bled through the paper. Time, in this moment, flowed through memories instead of measurements, and that profound realization rendered each hour more vibrant than any year he had endured in the shimmering towers of the tech industry. The residence had transformed as well, not merely in furniture or decor, but in its very essence. It had undergone a remarkable change from being quiet and sterile to becoming loud and beautifully chaotic. Toys lay scattered beneath the couch, mismatched socks occupied every corner, and fingerprints adorned each window. The walls were adorned with a variety of artwork, some elegantly framed while others were simply taped up, and the floors showed the marks of scooter wheels and the patter of running feet. Ethan was unfazed by the chaos. He was absolutely enamored by it. It signified that the boys were comfortable enough to assert their presence. Aiden had begun his journey through middle school, standing taller now, with shoulders that suggested the man he was destined to be. He continued to keep an eye on his brothers, but he also began to look after Ethan. One evening, as Ethan arrived late to pick them up from school, Aiden got into the car, shot him a serious glance and asked, "You okay? It seems you've been putting in some late hours once more." It was soft yet sincere. Ethan smiled, tousled his hair, and expressed gratitude, saying, "Thanks for checking on me." Thus, their connection had deepened, rooted in a shared, unspoken admiration. Jasper became a member of a local chess club, and in just 2 months he was triumphing over opponents twice his age. His drawings had evolved into more detailed, more intricate pieces, now displayed with pride on the kitchen corkboard. He once placed a folded sketch on Ethan's desk, offering no explanation. As Ethan opened it, he was met with a photograph capturing the 4 of them, him and the boys, intertwined in a moment of unity, standing hand in hand before their home. At the top, Jasper had inscribed a single word in meticulous block letters: home. Leo, a true visionary, began crafting his own tales, consistently featuring a character known as Captain Dad, who battled adversaries with compassion and pancakes. He read them aloud to Ethan at night, his voice brimming with enthusiasm, frequently pausing to introduce unexpected plot twists mid-sentence. Ethan absorbed every word, continually astonished by how someone so diminutive could harbor such an abundance of light within. Leo continued to call him Dad without a moment's pause, and each time the word left his lips, it struck Ethan with the same intensity as that very first moment. They embraced traditions now. Saturday mornings remained dedicated to pancakes, evolving into a cherished ritual. Leo took charge of the fruit, Jasper meticulously set the table, and Aiden ensured everything met the highest standards. In the garden behind the house, each boy selected a single plant to nurture: tomatoes, carrots, and strawberries, and their dedication surpassed that of any board meeting Ethan had ever been a part of. Each Friday evening was dedicated to films, accompanied by a fresh guideline. No phones permitted, not even Ethan's. He was indifferent. He enjoyed the brief escape from being connected. And then came the stillness, the unsung moments that hold immense significance. It was a moment when Jasper quietly entered Ethan's room amidst the thunderstorm, settling down next to him in silence. Or when Aiden invited Ethan to school for Dad Day and encouraged him to introduce himself to the class. Or when Leo experienced a nightmare and softly asked, "Can you stay until I drift off?" Ethan consistently remained present. Each and every time, the foundation had evolved into something far greater than he ever envisioned. It now boasted offices, team, helpers. They were initiating pilot programs in 3 additional states and had supported more than 2,000 children in merely 1 year. Yet Ethan never allowed it to take over his life. He toiled after the soothing tales of bedtime, amidst the hustle of school hours, or in the tranquil early mornings when the home was enveloped in calm. He had at last discovered a harmony he had previously thought was unattainable. Occasionally, the press made attempts to track his movements. He remained unresponsive. A solitary interview was granted to a local journalist, someone who had experienced life in foster care during their upbringing. The headline proclaimed, "He didn't save them. They saved one another." That was the sole narrative Ethan believed deserved to be shared. One evening, as autumn started to settle in and the leaves transformed into shades of gold and crispness, Ethan lingered on the porch, a blanket draped over his shoulders, observing the boys through the window. Inside, they grappled for the final cookie, laughter erupting so fiercely that they struggled to catch their breath. The home radiated with the gentle, dancing glow of a fireplace that, though hardly functional, was perpetually aglow. For the first time in his life, Ethan Cole found himself at peace, no longer in pursuit of something greater. He possessed it all. Not the pursuits he once sought, influence, riches, acclaim, but the elements that genuinely held significance. Hands that extended towards him in the darkness of his fears. Whispers that referred to him as father. A place where he was essential, cherished, adored, not for his contributions, but merely for his presence. A small wooden sign now hung above the front door, its uneven strokes a testament to Leo's handiwork, adorned with the signatures of all three boys. Stated, crafted with passion, not chance. Each time Ethan walked underneath it, his fingers grazed the edge instinctively, as if performing a silent act of appreciation. Ultimately, his most significant achievement transcended the tech empire he had once dominated. It was a journey, an authentic one. Amidst the whirlwind of chaos, crayons, and affection, Ethan Cole discovered, at last, what he hadn't realized he was seeking. Tranquility. The essence of this tale lies not in the fact that a billionaire transformed the lives of three homeless boys, but in the profound way those boys transformed his own life. In a society fixated on dominance, appearance, and flawlessness, Ethan Cole's odyssey serves as a poignant reminder that true richness is found not in currency, but in the bonds we forge, the courage to be vulnerable, and the love that is freely given, expecting nothing in return. He discovered his salvation not in the glare of headlines or the weight of legacy, but in the warmth of bedtime tales, the aroma of charred pancakes, and the gentle grasp of three tiny hands seeking his in the night. It embodies a subtle strength, the type that often goes unnoticed by the world, yet perhaps it deserves recognition. At times, the most courageous act one can undertake is just to remain present.